Hi, welcome to our overview of Malcolm Knowles' 6 Attributes of Adult Learning. In this video, Nick and I will walk through each of our attribute concept maps, and we're going to explain the visual choices we made and share what these principles mean to us personally as educators and facilitators.
Our goal with these maps was to make each attribute feel intuitive and relatable. And as we narrate, you'll see how the visuals reflect the questions adult learners naturally ask, and how these attributes shape the way that Allison and I support adult learning in our professional roles. So I already have pulled up on the screen attribute 1, need to know.
So we designed this map to look like a warm coffee shop, a place where people ask real, practical questions. You'll see some thought bubbles like, why should I care about this? And does this have real world application? These directly represent how adults evaluate whether learning is worth their time. For me, this attribute reinforces something I learned as a first grade teacher. Learners thrive when they understand the purpose behind the content. With adults, the purpose needs to be explicit, relevant, and tied directly to their goals.
So, what speaks to me here is how need to know centers respect. At Kramer Hall, the adults that I work with often juggle work, family, and community commitments. When learning connects to a challenge that they're facing or a skill they want to build, engagement skyrockets. So, I apply this by always leading with the why when designing workshops or student-facing supports. So, the next map. Self-concept puts viewers in an airplane cockpit, symbolizing autonomy and control. The questions like, is the learning at my own pace? And I can be responsible for my learning outcomes. Highlight the shift from dependent learners to self-directed ones. For me, this reflects how adults want agency. In my own learning and professional development, having choices keeps me motivated and invested. When I design experiences, I try to give adults space to navigate content in ways that feel natural to them.
I connect with this deeply. Even coming from an elementary background, I've always valued student independence. With adults, it becomes even more essential. Their self-concept is tied to their identity, their confidence, and their sense that they have ownership over their growth.
So the
So,
next attribute, experience, I think Allison wanted to talk a little bit about this first, though.
so this map uses imagery of hands across generations to represent the rich experiences adults bring with them. The questions, what patterns do I see from how I've learned best in the past, and which past mistakes can guide me now, capture just how deeply experience shapes learning. For me, Knowles's emphasis on experience helps me see adult learning differently. Adults walk into the room with stories, skills, and resilience. Designing learning that acknowledges that makes the process feel more collaborative and respectful.
Exactly. And my work with students, colleagues, and community partners constantly reminds me that people don't start at zero. Experience influences confidence, learning preferences, and even vulnerability. So when I facilitate, I try to make space for people's lived experiences to inform the conversation and not stay hidden in the background. So here for the next attribute, we have readiness, and we used a racetrack to symbolize movement toward goals. Adults are most ready to learn when the content aligns with something immediate, a need, a gap, a responsibility, or a personal milestone. The thought bubbles reflect that. Which goals will this help me achieve? And do I have the time and motivation for this right now? This resonates with me because I often see how timing shapes learning. If the learner's life context says go, they accelerate. If not, even great content won't land. Applying this means checking in with learners about bandwidth, relevance, and urgency before diving into content.
Exactly, Nick. Readiness is deeply tied to purpose. Adults engage when the learning serves a current role or challenge. As someone transitioning from K to 12 education to adult learning, this attribute reminds me to ground content in what matters now for the people I support. So this attribute is orientation, and our board game map highlights that adults learn best when instruction is problem-centered, not content-centered. The questions on this slide, like how does this relate to a problem I'm facing? And is the scenario relatable to my professional life? Reflect the practical lens adults use. For me, this attribute is energizing. Adults don't want hypotheticals just for the sake of hypotheticals. They want usable solutions. This aligns with my desire to design learning that fills real gaps and helps people navigate real challenges.
Yeah, and from my perspective, this attribute reinforces something I see every semester. Adults need learning to feel immediately actionable, right? So when content helps them solve a problem at work, at home, or in their community, they stay engaged and curious. Our final map, my personal favorite, shows two learners around a campfire representing warmth, connection, and reflection, the core of intrinsic motivation. The questions here center on purpose, meaning, and confidence. My biggest takeaway is that adults are driven far more by internal factors than external ones. When learning strengthens identity, confidence, or purpose, motivation grows. And I apply this by creating environments where adults feel capable, welcome, and seen.
I agree, Nick. This one's also my favorite. And it connects back to my teaching roots. Even with young children, motivation thrives when learners feel encouraged and supported. With adults, it's just a little bit more intentional because they're tied to personal goals, self-belief, and the desire to grow for reasons that matter beyond the grades or the rewards. So, together, these six attributes remind us that adult learning is most powerful when it is human-centered, when it respects autonomy, past experiences, real-world challenges, and personal goals.
And as facilitators, these principles challenge us to design learning that feels relevant, empowering, and grounded in the lives people are actually living. So by applying these attributes, we can create environments where adults not only learn, but thrive.
Thanks
Thanks for
for
watching.
watching.